no comedy clubs in America.
So what did you do, Tom?
So you did what you comedians do.
Did you steal other people's material?
No. We were.
I'm not calling you a thief, I know that that's the worst thing. But how do you? I'm just going back to 1969. How do you start? And
let me.
How do you get booked?
You're going to let me finish?
No, Tom. I love you, Tom.
Okay, I do too. Ronnie and I have worked together. Like Ronnie, prior to this, Ronnie said we probably worked together over 200 times, and that's the truth.
True.
In all the years
I'm
I've been
sorry
in
for
business.
that.
Yeah, well, and so was the audience many nights, but we didn't care. Yeah. Anyhow. When I came out of the service, I ended up going into the JCs, the Junior Chamber of Commerce. And
I'm going to interrupt you again.
Okay.
You were in the service. Let's fill that out.
I spent 4 years in the military. I went in the day I was 17. I was in the United States Navy.
Come on now.
Thank you for your service.
Honestly, thank you for your service.
Well, I appreciate that. I served on 2 aircraft carriers, the USS Essex and the USS Tarawa.
Wow.
And then I served in a Marine Corps unit for 9 months called NEGDF, Naval Emergency Ground Defense Force.
Wow.
Now, but I got out of the military at age 21.
You were already like 10 steps up in notches on my belt. You just went up another 4.
Well, I appreciate that.
I'm not kidding.
I really appreciate it because I appreciate the men and women in our armed forces, and like you, I've done shows for them all over the world, in Iraq and everywhere.
Yes.
But to get back to how I got on stage the first time, when I was in the Junior Chamber of Commerce, I wrote a drug education program teaching grade school children the ills of drug abuse with humor. It's a concept I had. In those days, they weren't teaching drug education at a college or a high school level, let alone at an elementary school level. And I thought we had to get to them before they even got to high school. And in many
what made
cases,
you think of that? Why did you think that way?
It was the number one problem in our community at that time on the south side of Chicago, Harvey, Illinois, where I grew up at.
Tough area.
Yeah, and so very tough area. But so anyhow, we attacked the problems of the community. That's what the JCs are all about. In doing so, we got leadership training doing so. What happened was when I proposed this project to the membership, a new member named Tim Reed graduated from Norfolk State College. E.I. DuPont recruited him into Chicago, and he wanted to work with me on this project. We went into the school system. The program became number 1 in 50 states and in 22 foreign countries through their publications on how to teach drug education at an elementary school level.
Wow.
One day, a little 8th grade girl, now most of it was based on humor. We were making each other laugh.
Yeah.
We played music. We got the kids laughing, and once we got them laughing, then we start planting the seeds. One day, a little 8th grade girl said, "You guys are so funny. You ought to become a comedy team."
Wow.
And the thought of an 8th grade girl, I thought of a black-white comedy team intrigued us because
tell everybody, Tim, if you're not, we all know Tim Reed, but some people out there might not know Tim Reed.
Tim Reed later became Venus Flytrap on WKRP Cincinnati. He became Downtown Brown on Simon & Simon. He recently was on a show called Sister Sister. He played the father.
He also had Frank's Place, which is a Emmy-winning classic.
Absolutely.
But really
one of the greatest sitcoms I've ever seen.
Great African-American actor and comedian.
Yeah, but at that time, neither one of us had ever been on stage before.
Yeah.
And we went up
and you're not African-American because this is radio and no one can see you.
Yeah, right.
So it's a black-white team in what year?
In 1969.
And how did that affect
Well, we went on, there were no comedy clubs in America in those days, so we went into a jazz club and asked the guy, could we get up? And he said, yes, when the jazz club, Now, my point of that is that the 4th time we ever appeared on stage, a guy put a
It just makes me laugh because you don't know anything at 4 times in. I already know this is going to be a good story.
Well, it's not a happy story, but the 4th time on stage, a guy put a lit cigarette out in Tim's face.
Oh my gosh!
And tried to beat the hell out of me. I boxed when I was in the service, but he outweighed me by 100 pounds and pummeled me pretty bad.
Wow!
But because an interesting
was
thing.
that the Laugh Factory?
No. There were no comedy clubs in those days. This was a tough.
I'm being facetious because you and I worked that club together.
Right. This was a place called the Golden Horseshoe in Chicago Heights, Illinois. Now, my point about that time, the Vietnam War was raging. The African Americans were rioting in every major city in America.
Yes.
being disenfranchised from the system. So wherever you went, that was the backdrop. America was in turmoil. And to see a black and white guy on the stage, in those days, you didn't see a black and white guy walk down the street together, let alone on a stage together.
Right.
The interesting thing about racism, and we'll move on. In those days, we worked all black clubs, what they call the Chitlin Circuit, black-owned, black-operated nightclubs.
Yeah.
The Sugar Shack in Boston, the 20 Grand in Detroit, the High Chaparral in Chicago, the Burning Spear, the Club Harlem in Atlantic City before there was gambling. when you work these clubs, if there was a black guy who hated white people, hated them with a passion, he wasn't mad at me. He was mad at Tim for being with me. If we worked an all-white club where there was a redneck, racist white guy and he hated black people, he wasn't mad at Tim. He was mad at me for being with Tim. So that was the strange thing about racism. So we put up with that for 6 years, and the majority of people who saw us like this, we got an album out, we did some national TV.
Yes.
And one day Tim decided he wanted to be more of an actor, and we separated, and I came out here and started working at the Comedy Store, onto the Tonight Show, and the rest is history, as they say.
Well, that's amazing. So, I mean, what was your early angle? Has your act evolved into different types of material or styles over the years, or has it always just been like an improving, growing body of work that covers the same kind of themes?
Yeah, well, every stand-up comedian, Ronnie knows this, we evolve.
Yeah.
The worst thing you can ever do, most stand-up comedians make this terrible, terrible mistake. They start out emulating another comedian, that's where you all start, but then you evolve into your own persona. You become yourself on stage. But the worst thing a comedian can do is compare themselves to another comedian. You'll say, gee, I started out with Ronnie, and Ronnie's doing the Tonight Show, and I'm, there's a great Hindu proverb. There's nothing noble about being superior to another man. True nobility lies in being superior to your former self.
Oh, wow.
Am I a better friend than I was last year? Am I a better father than I was last year? Am I a better comedian than I was last year? So my whole comedy career, the only person I've ever been in competition with is my former self, listening to my tapes. How we do, and we keep, and you evolve and you grow. So my material is, through the years, of course, it's grown into whatever is happening in my life or whatever I observe.
So I have a question. I have a hard time, so I do acting, TV hosting, and comedy. Mm-hmm. And
now radio.
And radio now, yeah. But I have a hard time listening to my comedy, whereas I can watch me on TV as an actor or a TV host and not have any issue with it whatsoever. But I think because I'm the writer, the director, the producer, and it's me personally, I have a hard time watching myself. How do you feel watching your own material? Are you ultra critical? I'm so critical against myself. It's just always a painful experience.
I kind of think most comedians are that way. I am. And the only reason I used to watch is for growth. I would see, I made a mistake. Today, I can't stand, as you pointed out earlier, I did 61 appearances on The Tonight Show. If ever somebody
That's
sends
worth applause right there.
Whenever somebody sends me a tape or something like that, I cringe when I watch my old Tonight Show.
Yeah.
Because we all feel we're so much better today,
Yeah.
I would only watch and I only listen to my tapes for growth. Oh, I could have done this better. Oh, I could have said that at a different time in the show. That kind of stuff.
Because, why didn't I think of this whole angle to go?
Exactly. We never ever arrive.
Yeah.
You never arrive as a stand-up comedian.
It's like golf.
Yeah, exactly. You never arrive at stand-up comedy. You just you hopefully getting better. I saw George Burns. I used to do the Dean Martin roast with George and other.
Did you really?
Yeah. We in fact, I did the one that we roasted George.
Wow.
I went to see him at Caesars in Lake Tahoe. I was working at Harrah's, and I went to see George. He was 95 years old. He didn't run out to the microphone, but when he got out there, he did a strong hour and 10 minutes. Wow. And I went backstage afterward, and he was looking at some notes like we comedians do mostly before the show. But he was looking at some notes. I walked in his dressing room, and I said, George, how you doing? Good show. He said, oh, hi, Tommy. How you doing? He said, he was looking at his notes. He said, I was working on some new material tonight. And I said to myself, that's what I want to do. I want to be 95 years old working on new material.
Yeah. You and I both worked with Rodney a lot, and Rodney would work on new material every time I was with him, every single time.
And I still do. I go to the Laugh Factory and try out new material because that's fun for me. I still love stand-up comedy. I love show business. I hate getting there. I hate the traveling, But,
so it's not in a limo? Is that what you're saying?
No. It was.
So, honestly, let's go over your career I'm just going to, look, Tim Reed, huge success with the team. Then you go on to come out here. So many Tonight Show appearances, probably more than any other individual in history, hosting the Tonight Show, touring with Sinatra for years. 13 years?
Yeah, 13 years.
So if you had to say, wow, this is what I'm most proud of, it's this. I can't believe think of the young boy Tom, like at 13 years old, going, I can't believe I did that. What is it?
Well, there's so many things along the way.
Of course there is.
Along the way. However, there's no question that first appearance on The Tonight Show totally changed my life.
Wow.
One appearance on The Tonight Show, Freddie Prinze got a sitcom the next day.
Yeah.
I did one appearance on The Tonight Show. I was in the unemployment line. I had a wife and 3 kids. I'm on my rear end. I couldn't make rent money.
Yeah.
One appearance on The Tonight Show. The next day, CBS signed me to a development deal. Saw a guy named Lee Curlin from New York saw me on the
Thank you, Lee.
Oh, God bless him. He's gone now, but he saved my. I got a check the next day from CBS and then a check every month, and so it totally changed my life. Now, doing the Tonight Show successfully is one moment, but touring with Sammy Davis Jr. for 3 years, touring with Dean Martin, but touring with Frank Sinatra, gracing the same stage to me the greatest entertainer that ever lived of all time. Yeah. 20,000-seat arenas to go out there, and in 35 minutes you got to get them ready for him.
And they're ready for the top of the top. So you have to live up to that level.
Yeah, they came to see him, But my point is to be able to that I could say that Sammy Davis Jr., Dean Martin, and Frank Sinatra thought enough of my performance that I could grace the same stage with them. Then you can close a lid on me because
I agree. What eye did you look into with Sammy?
Yeah.
Oh,
come on.
I gotta be mad.
For those who don't know, Sammy Davis Jr. had one eye. But by the way, I do that in my one-man show. I tell the story. Sammy had one eye, and I'm talking about Frank Sinatra's weird sense of humor. His bodyguard, Jilly Rizzo, had only one eye. He had a glass eye, and so did Sammy. So one Christmas, Frank bought a set of binoculars, sawed them in half, and sent one to Jilly and one to Sammy.
I thought you were going to say you found a way to sneak up on them when they were asleep and trade their eyeballs or something.
Hey, you told me a story one time that you're with Sinatra in New York City, and you walk into a party, and there's maybe 20 people in the room, and every single person is out the roof famous. And Frank is like, oh, hey, Tom, talk to this guy. And happened to be the Secretary of the State of the United States.
Henry Kissinger.
Henry Kissinger.
Well, it was more than that. There was several hundred people in the room. And ironically, that's the first time I met Donald Trump because Frank was talking to him. What happened was Frank and I were talking, and Henry Kissinger walked up. This is the first year I'm touring with Frank.
Yeah.
I'm still in awe of. I'm in a rarefied air, and staying in his home, and all these house guests were these stars, that I had seen in the movie when I grew up in Harvey, Illinois.
Yeah.
But now I'm Kirk Douglas and Gregory Peck and Clint Eastwood and
they're in the room. They're
Robert
hanging
Wagner,
out.
Jill St. John, and Angie Dickinson. And they're, hi, Tommy, enjoy the show. And I'm trying to act like, oh, yeah, this happens all the time. But I was so in awe, But I'm talking to Frank Sinatra, and at the big party at the Waldorf Astoria, they were honoring Barbara Sinatra. And he was talking to me about a gig we were going to be doing at the Garden State Arts Center in New Jersey.
I played there before myself.
Yeah, many great places.
Not with Sinatra, of course. My lead act was much smaller.
Enough, no Smirnoff. Yeah.
But while we were talking, Henry Kissinger came up and said to him, Francis, how are you doing? He said, Dr. Kissinger, it's nice to see you again. He said, this is Tom Dreesen. Tom is a comedian who's touring with me now. And Kissinger took his fist, it was kind of funny, and he hit me on the shoulder.
Yeah.
He said, I've seen you on The Tonight Show. You're a very funny lad.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, oh, my
God. But he had an accent like this. I've seen you on The Tonight Show. You're very good.
The funny part of that story is that at that moment when a guy named Lee Castle, a band leader of Frank Sinatra, was walking by, and he stopped and he interrupted Henry Kissinger. He said, excuse me, and he said to me, Tommy, did you hear about Tony from Milwaukee? I said, Tony from Milwaukee? He said, the feds busted him. He got 2 years. He's in the joint now. Now, I'm talking to Henry Kissinger. All the years of handling a heckler, I didn't even know what to say. I just said, oh, yeah? And now Kissinger's looking at me like I'm Al Capone. And all I could think, I said, well, you know how them feds are. I said to Kissinger, but later on, Frank at that time turned around and was talking to Donald Trump, who was at that time just a real estate tycoon from New York,
Just.
Yeah. But anyhow, so later on, Frank said, what were you and Kissinger talking about? And I told him what, this guy Lee Castle said. He said, I know guys like that just don't get it. Because I went up to Lee and I said, Lee, who the hell were you talking about? He said, Tony Macchi, he said, he booked the Italian Fest in Milwaukee every year. I said, I met the guy one time when I was walking off stage. He handed me a check. He said, well, I thought you'd want to know. I said, didn't you see who I was talking to? Now you wonder why all people